Hey y'all, I originally was going to film my face and film myself talking about this, but child, it is hot. If you didn't know, Canada is currently in a heat wave, and I turned my fan on for this video, and I'd also lost the extension cord for my mic. So the fan was really loud and it was just horrible, and I think this video deserves more than the fan on the background. So I decided to redo the video, and this is why it was so late. But anyways, let's get back to it. So if you follow me on TikTok, you'll know that a video that I made about a certain man who wrote a certain play gained many eyes on it, and this got me to think more about subjects like neoliberalism, the weaponization of representation politics, and identity politics, and the co-opting of the latter point. Hi besties, welcome back to Black Wahala, and today we'll be talking about representation and identity politics and how much neoliberalism annoys me to no end. Before I get into these big topics that I'm going to get into in this video, I will first talk about some terminology, etymology, and history of all the big words that I have mentioned before. You know that when you use terms like identity politics, you are using the intellectual work of Black feminists. First, let's get into the term identity politics, because I think a lot of people, both on the left and on the right, use this word without a very apt or even a basic understanding of why the word was created and why it was and still is useful to marginalized people. The term identity politics was first coined by the Black feminist Barbara Smith and the Combahee River Collective in 1974. And this term originated from a need to center the importance of difference during the very white second wave of feminism. White feminists of this time formed their movements with the understanding that all women had similar experiences, and obviously this was and is not true. This was the context of identity politics. To state it plainly, the Combahee River Collective said that the most profound and potentially most radical politics come directly out of our own identity, as opposed to working to end somebody else's oppression. Something many people miss in this statement is that when the Combahee River Collective said our own, they did not mean individual group identities, but rather they meant to articulate the struggle of Black women with race, gender, sexual, and class oppression. They recognized that to form any useful political coalition against these oppressions, we must be cognizant of the differences between people so that collective liberation can be achieved. Please, for my sake, if you are watching this video, read the Combahee River Collective statement. Not only were they ahead of their time and brilliant, they were also seminal activists and theorists in a lot of the political discourse that we are still having today. As Alicia Garza notes, identity politics holds us accountable to ask more questions about for whom progress is being made. It says that no longer should we be expected to fight against somebody else's oppression without fighting against our own, too. This is what identity politics is. As we all know, not everyone sees identity politics as a good thing. In fact, it's gotten a lot of blowback and pushback, especially from people on the right, which is no surprise because that's their MO. But more recently, leftists have also pushed back against identity politics. And I believe there are two major reasons for this. One being that identity politics and things like representation swiftly became more popular in the general public lexicon and knowledge in the mid-2010s without any understanding of why it was even created in the first place and the people who created it. And two, because it has been used to further neoliberalism and liberal pursuits.
Identity politics. Identity politics is the tendency for people of a particular race, religion, gender, or ethnicity to organize politically around that special interest for the sole purpose of advancing that interest without concern or regard for any larger group or collective.
This is completely wrong. This isn't even what identity politics means, as I've said before. But again, proving my point, people using the wrong phrasing, especially on the right, on purpose. People lying about what identity politics is so that they can make a point.
I literally experienced the same situation already 25 years ago at a very politically correct conference where white liberals were excelling each other into who will humiliate himself more. We are to blame everything. Oh, Eurocentrism, we brought slavery, it's nightmare, we are guilty of everything. Christianity, the worst one, it was invented to screw other races and so on.
As I said earlier, people on the left do the very same thing. They parrot rhetoric about identity politics, and they haven't actually read any Black feminist work. I need y'all to stop doing this. Of course, this was never the intent of this term, but this is what liberals do not seem to understand. I've said a lot just now, so I'm going to break it down some more. Now, I speak of a decade of neoliberalism in popular culture during the 2010s, and you might be wondering what I'm referring to, but first, we need to understand what I mean by neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is often used to describe the last 40 years economically, in which the free market is extended to every part of our public and personal worlds. The state has transformed from public welfare to a promoter of markets and competition to enable the shift. It's associated with policies like cutting trade tariffs and barriers. Think NAFTA. But when I talk of neoliberalism, I talk of it in the cultural sense. I talk of a decade in which people fought about the holiday cups at Starbucks and argued about the culture wars. A decade on the heels of a huge recession in which big corporations like Apple, Starbucks, and Microsoft reigned supreme, and we boasted of the innovativeness of these corporations. Meanwhile, in my neighborhood, there are about 30 Starbucks alone serving the same drink. A decade in which the type of coffee you drank signaled your political values. A decade where elected officials were just guy pals or buddies instead of agents of the imperialist state. A decade where we boasted that our president was hot in the case of Justin Trudeau. Or a decade where we allowed this to happen.
Win, fail, OMG, cute, sorry, and yes? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to vote for a pretty boy Canadian named Justin. What could possibly go wrong? Cute.
Or that our president was black and cool in the case of Obama, without any consideration of what policies they were enacting and the harm they were doing. A decade where elected officials became celebrities in which people created cults of personalities around, moralizing them as good people who could do no wrong. Of course, cult of personality is not new to the 2010s. This is a common thing in politics, but it was very weird. I mean, if you were cognizant and alive around this time, you know what I mean. Just like the BuzzFeed articles and videos, it was a lot. Or in the case of Obama, after the end of his presidency, it was a decade in which liberals wrote articles upon articles crying for him to return without any real critique of his presidency. To me, this was a decade of no thoughts, just vibes. So is it no surprise that in this decade, identity politics became super popular without any critical thinking or understanding of this phrase? No, not at all. Again, this was a decade of superficial political engagement. Of course, it's not like this has really changed either. But as I've already said, liberals really did and still do not understand the term identity politics. People do not take the intellectual contributions of Black women seriously enough to engage with us beyond creating catchphrases or sloganeering. Identity politics in this decade became a ghost of itself. It became a way to virtue signal. It became a way for you to differentiate yourself from other people by noting your several intersecting identities, if you will. Identity politics was and is a radical vision of liberation, but you wouldn't know that if you learned about it during this time, and if you only used the phrase and understood the phrase through public knowledge. Funnily enough, a lot of people keep saying that neoliberalism is over and that may be possible in the economic sense of the word, but not in the cultural sense. I think what may be happening culturally is that younger generations, specifically Gen Z, are boldly challenging ideas of neoliberalism that were popular in the 2010s. I don't think Gen Z looks kindly on ideas such as girl boss capitalism, the glorification of labor, the glorification of celebrities who may have vague leftist political leanings, the moralizing of politics into a camp of good leftists and bad people on the right, as we are aware that leftists and those on the right do make bad political decisions that further the imperialist state, and the glorification of elected officials into celebrities who can say and do no wrong because they are good people. Of course, Gen Z still falls into these traps like millennials did. Good example, the glorification of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But I see more young people challenging this. I mean, look at the support for more democratic socialist leaders like Bernie. But of course, you could also argue that there was a cult of personality being built around Bernie as well. So we might not really be that far off. We might still be in this era. So you may ask, why are we even talking about this? The answer is simple, because I want to, duh. But also because I believe that many people in our society, our politicians and leaders especially, are currently weaponizing their identities to pass economic and global policies that actually do not serve us and people especially in the global south. Just because the head of a state or a corporation is a black woman, a black man, a person of color, queer, or basically not a cisgender heterosexual white person does not mean they should be free of critique and challenge for any policies that work to serve exploitation, imperialism, and neocolonialism. The petite bourgeoisie or black elites in our society tell us that we should be grateful and happy that we too are being represented in empire and oppressive structures. We should be happy that we have elected officials who have supported policies that have harmed so many black people, but it's okay because they have similar lived experiences as us, right? Wrong. The fact that I'm arguing against this might surprise you because I've made many videos about the importance of representation in media. But while I myself can see the importance of representation when it comes to media, I am not fiending for representation that badly. There is nothing liberating or empowering to me about black people occupying the master's place and bringing harm and danger to other marginalized folks. There is absolutely nothing enticing about that kind of behavior to me.
It's really a major deal.
It gives us hope. There's good things coming now to this country and to the people of this country because she cares.
And on the heels of a year riddled with protests and a country divided, people say this is a time for unity.
She represents an idea that we could be better. It's about changing how people are thinking in this country, this neighborhood.
So thanks for watching, y'all. I've been in sort of a rut recently when it comes to content, and I've been doing all sorts of things and reading all kinds of books to get out of it, but nothing has been working. It's not even that I'm out of ideas, but the motivation is lacking, y'all. But don't worry, I'll get out of it. So let me know what you think about what I've mentioned in this video in the comments below. We are almost at 1K, so that is very exciting. So keep sharing, keep liking, and keep subscribing because I am so grateful for all of y'all. See y'all in the next video. Bye, besties.